Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Classic X-Men number 3, and the focus is on the backup story to this reprint of Uncanny X-Men number 95, which was the issue that shockingly at the time Thunderbird died. So this is the ghost or sculpture or statue of Thunderbird that his younger brother James is embracing there. And we have the X-Men here, and they're in somber mood because they're in New Mexico to attend Thunderbird's funeral, but things go otherwise than they initially expected. And if you pay close attention to this portion of the back cover by John Bolton, pencils and inks by him, you see a woman wearing a hat, and there on her right is actually what's supposed to be Professor X in a wheelchair. So the artwork here has been cut to fit the back cover, so we're not getting the full image of what Bolton drew. Let's flip this one around to see the front cover, and you can see here it's by Arthur Adams, pencils and inks by him, and it's also one of the celebration covers connected with Marvel's 25th anniversary, which was 1986 and 1961 to 1986. And it's funny to say that from the vantage point of making this video, which is August 2025. So yeah, you can see that there is a border to all of these covers. The border drawn by John Romita Sr. And inside we primarily got headshots of significant characters. So for the X-Men books, for Classic X-Men, Arthur Adams drew Storm, and over on Uncanny X-Men, John Romita Jr. focused in on Wolverine. Let's open this up to the inside cover and we'll see the credits here. So the credits for the backup story, there's a spot illustration of Thunderbird by Arthur Adams, dated the 2nd of May 1986. The credits for the backup story are Chris Claremont, writer, John Bolton, pencils and inks, Tom Orzechowski, letters, and Glynis Oliver on colors. So there's the splash page for Uncanny X-Men number 95, and then once we get to the end of this particular issue, you see Thunderbird there, and he's acting heroically to stop the plane that the villain is aboard, and Banshee's there warning him to get off the plane before it explodes. It's much too late. Professor X is in mental contact with Thunderbird even as the plane explodes. There it goes. Professor's in distress, Banshee too, and it's over. So poor old Thunderbird, he was only an X-Man for Giant Size X-Men number 1 and issues 94 and 94 and 95 of Uncanny X-Men. So he did not last very long. And he was a kind of an aggressive character. He had an attitude. You see that here where he's arguing with Cyclops, who's team leader, when he wants to take point on the infiltration mission, and Cyclops tells him, "That's Wolverine's job, mister. You stay with the team." "The heck I will. I'm as good a scout as that midget." So something that Claremont said about Thunderbird was that his personality, his character, was way too much like Wolverine's, and really it was a choice of one or the other was going to die. Claremont wasn't a big fan of either character really in terms of their characterization possibility at the time, and then the choice was made to keep Wolverine and kill Thunderbird. And years later, 1986, Claremont returns to the death of Thunderbird and tells an untold story of the funeral, and more specifically Mourning. So the work of grief. And the third person narration declares, the faintest hint of a breeze disturbs the morning air, but not a sound, it's silence. So Stanley presents Mourning, the title of this backup story. The solitude fits his mood. His name is Charles Xavier. He's a teacher and has come to this remote and desolately beautiful corner of New Mexico to bury one of his students. So that was the territory of the Apache Indians, and that is where John Proudstars tribe and family live, and that's where he is to be buried. Beautiful artwork here. Glynis Oliver's colours really complementing John Bolton's pencils and inks there, and selling the specific light and colour of the New Mexico desert. And then we're into Professor X's thoughts. Really also well thought out to have Professor X small in respect of the landscape. It gives a sense of his isolation and the distress he's in on account of the death of one of his X-Men. And so he's engaging in recrimination, self-recrimination, where he thinks to himself, how naive of me, how foolish to think I could send the X-Men into battle after battle against the most hopeless of odds and have them always emerge unscathed. Such mad luck could not last forever. And you know, metatextually what's going on is the shift from the Silver Age to the Bronze Age. In the Silver Age, the X-Men will go on crazy missions and come back unscathed, because those were the conventions of superhero stories in the 60s. But it's much, much different in the late 70s. Characters now, superheroes, can die, and Thunderbird is one of those. So the Professor thinks to himself, and John Proudstar was the first to fall. I hardly knew him. Now I must bid him farewell. And back into the third person narration, Xavier is a telepath, the strongest such on Earth. And yet that awesome power can, on occasion, be a two-edged sword. He was in full psionic rapport with Thunderbird when the young Apache died. We saw that a few minutes ago. Every moment, every facet of that ultimate experience was shared between them. For the lucky one, it ended. For the other, it never will. So the trauma of being in Thunderbird's mind when he was killed in that explosion, and someone who knows something about being in another person's mind when they die, is Jean Grey. And so she's dressed in mourning, dressed in black, and she says to the Professor, it's a hard thing for those like us to face the death of another. Kisses him on the cheek, he, her. Jean, he says, thank you for coming. How could I not, she asks. I'm a telepath too, Professor. Now remember, at this time, Marvel Girl had left the X-Men. She was not an active member of the team after Giant Size X-Men #1. Cyclops stayed on as leader, but she did not. So she's come from her civilian life to attend the funeral of a man she briefly met in Giant Size X-Men #1. And she says here, I heard your psychic cry of anguish. I know how you feel. I went through much the same years ago when my best friend Annie Malcolm was killed by a car. So the Professor remembers that tragedy brought us together, he says. You helped me then, today it's my turn. And then she is taken aback. Something's happened, a cry from the station. So what's happened? There's a complication in the plot so that we get a story that is more than convention. It's Colossus, Professor. He's terribly upset, says Jean. Oh no, how could anyone do such a thing? I see the image too, the Professor says to her psionically in Peter's thoughts. So the Professor calls the X-Men. They're all in civilian clothing, and they run towards the station where they find that the coffin is empty. Look, comrades, says Colossus, someone has stolen Thunderbird's body. So this is highly unexpected. And Nightcrawler is aghast. Nightcrawler has, is religiously committed. He's Catholic, and so he uses the evaluation desecration, have people no sense of decency. And Storm has a different perspective because her relation to the world of the supernatural and the spiritual is other than Nightcrawler's Catholicism. She says, John Proudstar's spirit is long gone, Nightcrawler. Violence done his remains can do him no harm. Only those responsible. And Banshee, of course, who's also Catholic, says, in your beliefs, perhaps, Storm, ours are different. So the priest is there. He says, I'll call the police. And Cyclops rejoins, with respect, Father, they won't arrive for hours. By then, anything might happen. My colleagues and I will find him. But the parents, the grieving parents, are there, and they say no. And the father says, we appreciate your offer and the respect and friendship for John that prompted it. You took our firstborn son from us, and brought him home. You've all done enough. Now we ask you to please leave us in peace. So, like there's potentially sentiment and significance between the lines of what the father says rather politely. But Nightcrawler asks, don't they care? Look at them, Kurt, says Storm. Can you doubt it? Then why? And I really like this illustration of Wolverine taking off his jacket. Won't find out here, Elfie says in his laconic style. Wolverine, what are you doing? Take a guess. So Cyclops says to Wolverine, Thunderbird's parents asked us not to. Then stay, bub, returns Wolverine. Me, I was taught a team takes care of its own. So off he goes into the desert. Really like the swatch of pink and magenta there in Glynis Oliver's palette. And Storm is of Wolverine's perspective. She says, I do not much like Wolverine's manner, Cyclops, but I agree. And Cyclops says, no argument either way, Storm, we better tag along. If only, and this is a reminder of the frictional relationship between Cyclops and Wolverine back in this era of their being teammates. He says, if only to keep the obnoxious little runt out of trouble. Hopefully, Professor, this won't take long. So Professor X says, be careful, Scott, and good luck. And Jean will stay with him. Jean and I will monitor your progress telepathically. And Jean says to the Professor psionically, Professor, I caught a stray thought from the Proudstars when they saw the coffin, as did I, returns the Professor. They strongly suspect the culprit is John's younger brother, James. So Jean asks whether she should side probe them to find out why. Leave them be, Jean, says the Professor aloud. I suspect the X-Men will learn those answers soon enough. So this is really well-paced story from Claremont and Bolton. And now we have Wolverine on his haunches in the desert. He's following the trail of the body, and he's picked up another scent. Scent's male, Apache, similar to Johnny's but younger, probably a kid brother. Boys covering his tracks. Trail would be invisible to anyone but me. He's heading for the mountain. And then Banshee is flying about looking for the body too. And Wolverine thinks, brilliant, Banshee. Remind me to recommend you every time the X-Men need to sneak up on anybody. Flame and jet makes less rocket. But Banshee doesn't care. Dust and dry air aren't good for my throat, he thinks to himself. It's starting to hurt. I'm too low, flying too fast, pushing my sonic scream to its limits and probably beyond. I could care less, he thinks to himself. If I'd pushed a little harder, taken a risk or two, we wouldn't be burying John today. So he feels guilty, but he's also going back and forth in his mind about Thunderbird's own responsibility. Thunderbird had every chance to jump clear. He chose to stay with that plane until the end. And here's the key question for Banshee. What demons drove you to such a mad decision, laddie? If I'd been a better friend, I might have helped you fight them off. That'll never happen again with anyone. I swear it, he says. Miles behind, Nightcrawler and Colossus are feeling the heat in the desert. They're not suited to it, either of them, or used to it. And Cyclops says to them, if you two are having problems, you should return to Professor Xavier and Jean at the station. But Colossus responds, we're fine, Cyclops, we can keep up. And Nightcrawler says, are we not all X-Men? Mine hair? Do we not all stay and pull together? I will do my fair share, as poor Thunderbird tried so hard to do. And then we get a flashback, and we get here the device at the time in Marvel Comics to indicate flashback scenes. See the slight curve on the corner of this thin vertical panel. It's obscured by Orzechowski's caption there, which is obscuring the corner. But another device that Bolton is using is a thicker line for the border of the panels in the flashback. So he's not consistently doing the curved border just to start, and you'll see on the next page to conclude the flashback. Really like the perspective here where Thunderbird is punching away at the punching bag, and we get a shot looking up at Nightcrawler standing on this beam in the danger room. Bravo, John, he exclaims. I'll wager that punching bag will never say a cross word to you again. It's fairly humorous from Nightcrawler. And Thunderbird responds, that crawler is a fact, as basically he punches the punching bag so hard it snaps the chain link and it's caught by Colossus. That's really well illustrated. Great transition there as well. Great storytelling by Bolton. And Colossus says, you spend hours here, comrade Thunderbird. What is it you wish to prove? And Thunderbird responds evasively, just blowing off steam is all, but why? Colossus insists. You really want to know, Pally? Da, very much, responds Colossus. And here Thunderbird says, I keep asking myself, what is there here, as an X-Man, for me really, for any of us? Don't you guys ever wonder, we gonna dude up in these skin tights and punch heads for Xavier for the rest of our lives? And if we do, how long will those lives last? So he's asking existential level type questions. What's the meaning of it all? And Nightcrawler responds, again, this is like the reverse angle here where we're above Nightcrawler and we're looking down at Thunderbird standing on the floor of the danger room. Really like that choice by Bolton. If you feel that way, John, why stay? Beats me, Kurt, he says. And you can see this look on his face, that he's in distress, but he's covering for it in terms of, or he's trying to cover it, but he's letting something slip here. I guess it's because I got nowhere else to go. And then you can see what I said earlier. You've got the little curves there on the panel borders, not here and here, but here. And we go from the thicker black panel line to the thinner one, the usual thin one for scenes set in the present. He said that as a joke, Cyclops, and made light of our whole conversation. I accepted that. I should have listened harder. He was so confused, so full of misery and questions, but I had no answers. I thought time would work things out for him. The sad thing is, maybe I was right, because he's got no more problems now that he's dead. So then Storm sends some rain to cool them down in the desert, and she lands and she informs Cyclops Wolverine has reached the mountains. So Cyclops is impressed. The man can move. We are all of us full of surprises, Cyclops, says Storm, and it's a reminder again that they're just getting to know each other. The new team at this point in their story, their overarching story, with far more to ourselves than meets the eye. And what about Thunderbird 2? What else is there to him that was more than meets the eye in Giant Size X-Men number 1 and Uncanny X-Men 194 and 195? Sorry, I've got those numbers wrong again, 94 and 95. So Storm remembers back, and we've got the curved border there again and the thick black line for the panel border. She quickly, about her move into the attic of Xavier's mansion, she quickly filled the vast open space with flowers, whose life and colours and heady fragrances reminded her of her African home. So Thunderbird has snuck into her loft. Thunderbird? I didn't hear you enter. She wheels around. Weren't meant to, he says. I'm not as sneaky as Wolverine, but I get by. And Storm asks, and this is an interesting question, she's perceptive, must you measure yourself against your teammate in everything? And this is really interesting. Thunderbird says, he's the best, the man to beat. You're ill at ease, my friend, responds Storm. Is anything the matter? Just edgy, he says. Man gets careless, drops his guard, even for an instant. He's history. And doesn't that sound like Wolverine, like his speech pattern? Again, it kind of brings home to us that there wasn't room on the team for two of these types of men. But Claremont is going to give us a coming soon a backstory for Thunderbird that we're not expecting. You're among friends, says Storm. Here in my home, there's nothing to fear. But Thunderbird laughs. Ha, he says. Are my blossoms so formidable? Not plants, lady, jungles, he says. Total deception. The beauty lures you into a false sense of security, and then it kills you, or you kill to survive. So Storm is not expecting that answer. Tell me of your native land, John. What is it like, she says. Nothing special, he responds. I couldn't wait to leave and missed it with all my heart the moment I did. Have you family there and friends? Family, sure. Friends, he says. I left them in the jungle. Loved ones, she asks. A girl to cherish, Aurora, kids to raise? Never. And that's a really interesting choice here. After these lush panels with all the flowers, Bolton leaves this space completely empty, negative space, and we just get this profile shot on Thunderbird and his downcast head, the spotting of blacks, the shadows. You can see the sadness in his eye. Never. The voice cracks, though. We're in the present. This is his body. Sky burial. Unsure whether it belongs to boy or man. And each time it does, James Proudstar burns with shame. So he's an adolescent and his voice is breaking. This is a warrior's funeral. His tribute to the brother he worshipped but hardly knew. And he wants it to be perfect. Logan's been watching for an hour. He'll leave when the X-Men catch up. So Logan, not interfering, sat behind this boulder observing. I know what happened to your body, Johnny, he thinks to himself as he smokes his cigar, but not why you chose to check out. So Logan sees Thunderbird's death as suicide. Surprised that matters to me, he thinks to himself. What's this? Looks like the kid tossed it away. So it's a box with a photograph in it. Corporal John Proudstar, US Marines, medals, honorable discharge, a record to be proud of, but you kept it hidden. You lied about your age, went off to war way before your proper time to prove your courage or manhood, or maybe just be one of the guys. So there it is. John Proudstar went to Vietnam underage. And when we go back to his dialogue here, family, sure, friends, I left him in the jungle. These men here that he's pictured with, they must have been shot and killed in Vietnam. And the horror of it, and also his guilt at surviving, must have played a role then, we infer, we conjecture, in his obligate suicide, exploding on that jet. So Wolverine gets it. And something happened, doesn't matter what, but it cut the heart out of your life. So the trauma was such that he could take no more joy in life. He was embittered. He was in despair. And Logan thinks laconically, too bad. Life isn't a game, boy. You wear a man's boots, shoulder a man's responsibilities. You take the consequences. It's a lesson all the X-Men better take to heart. Real, flaming quick. Because I suppose, like, this is very thoughtful from Claremont, whereby, you know, culturally speaking, the discourse around the Vietnam War is it's the one in which America lost its innocence regarding war, subsequent to the victories of World War I and World War II, wars that were seen as more honorable. Vietnam was a messy, dirty war, and so it was one in which maybe certain people's illusions about their country were destroyed or severely reconfigured, might be a charitable way of putting it. And Claremont is playing with that in respect of the transition from the Silver Age X-Men, where people go out on these crazy missions, but they all come back alive, and now the Bronze Age, where the superhero is vulnerable, where the superhero can die. And this is Logan's perspective on it. And it's unforgiving, but also incredibly sensible, which is Logan's character. Wolverine asks Cyclops. Cyclops is ostensibly the leader, but Wolverine has much more life experience. Nothing for us here, Psych, he says. Just a boy laying his big brother to rest in the old ways of their people. Whatever Thunderbird was running from or trying to prove, he's at peace now. We should all be so lucky. And then the final two panels go to James. Farewell, my brother, he says, as he picks up his costume. May the horses be fast and the grass sweet, and may you be happier riding the spirit road than you ever were on earth. This is not fair, then, he exclaims. You survived the white man's war, only to be lured to your doom by that devil Xavier with his honeyed words and false promises. He says he grieves, but he lies. He called you Thunderbird. Let it then be another Thunderbird, another Proudstar, who claims his life for yours, I swear, my brother, by all I hold holy, you will be avenged. And that ties into Uncanny X-Men, if I'm getting the numbers right, 192, 193, where he wears that costume and attacks the X-Men. And of course, later on in the future, James Proudstar would become Warpath of X-Force. So there you go. 11 pages of tremendous story art, really, really well thought out. Again, great colouring by Glynis Oliver, selling us on that New Mexico sky. Fantastic work. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on the backup story to Classic X-Men number 3, Mourning. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comment section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. Really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.